Okay, ready?
Born
Let's
ready.
do it. What was I going to say?
Good start.
All right. Well, welcome to the On a High Note series. Let's first just do a little round of introductions. Layla.
Hi, my name is Layla Roberts, and I'm originally from St. John's, Newfoundland, and I am a flute instructor at the University of Manitoba, and also teach some chamber music sometimes.
Hi, my name's Robin McMillan, and I'm the oboe instructor at the Desautels Faculty of Music at the University of Manitoba. And I also play a second oboe and English horn in the Winnipeg Symphony.
Hi, I'm Mika Heilbrunn. I also am an instructor at the Desautels Faculty of Music of Clarinet, and I am currently principal clarinet with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra.
And I'm Alan Harrington, happy to be hosting this discussion today, and I'm an associate professor at the Desautels Faculty of Music, and my instruments are saxophone and bassoon. So why don't we first just, let's talk a little bit about how we chose our instruments that we play. Why don't we start with you, Layla?
Well, it goes back many years, I guess. I feel very blessed that I come from a musical family. My father was a music teacher, and his mother actually, she taught me a bit of piano, and I did some Suzuki violin. And I think my sort of main memory of choosing the flute was, I don't remember how old exactly I was, but quite young. And I heard a recital by Marina Piccinini, who lived in Newfoundland at the time, and was just kind of taken away, I guess. And then in grade 5, actually, the university there has something called, or at least they did, maybe they still do, the Mun Lab Band, where grade 5 students got to go and learn from, I guess, the education majors there at the time. And so I went really wanting to play the flute, but actually the clarinet instructor kind of fought for me, and I ended up playing clarinet for that part of for that year. And then finally at the end of grade 5, my father gave in and got me a flute. And I guess it sort of went from there, and the love hasn't really stopped. It's just continued to expand, I guess. So I guess that's kind of it for me.
Great. Robin?
Well, I'm from a musical family also. So I started, and my mom's a pianist and my grandfather was a conductor. So I started playing the piano when I was 4, but I started playing the oboe when I got to grade 9 to high school. And it was for a really stupid reason. There was no oboe player in the band, and they needed somebody, and they wanted somebody who had some musical background already. So that was fine. I didn't even know what an oboe was until they told me about it. But for some reason, there was this idea that you had to play the clarinet first. And so they made me play the clarinet for a couple of months. And I'm sorry, Mika, I just hated it. And I was so awful at it. And I still remember what the mouthpiece tasted like and how I would squeak. It was just awful. And it doesn't help with playing the oboe. I don't know why. It's a myth and it's not true. And I would never.
I was trying to be nice, Robin.
It was, anyways, finally I got to the oboe, but I didn't, my high school band teacher was a cellist, and he didn't know anything about the oboe. And he gave me a book that literally was called How to Play the Oboe. And he said, just look at this. So, and I had this horrible plastic oboe, I won't say the brand, that my high school owned. And I had a reed that I had bought from the only music store in my hometown of Sarnia, Ontario. And I can only imagine what I sounded like. And then in my second year of high school, I was lucky to get a really good private teacher, but that first year was quite rough, and I feel sorry for anybody who had to listen to me. So, but it got better from there.
That's great. Clarinet it's a good instrument. Don't worry. Okay. My parents weren't professional musicians, but they were very into music and classical music and the arts, and they're always very supportive. So I was very lucky that way. I was studying piano as a young child, and I had a good teacher, and everything was going fine with piano. And then my teacher went away for a year. They were married to someone who was a professor, and they went on sabbatical. They moved away somewhere for a year, and I thought, okay, well, now I don't have to like play piano. I can try something else, instead. And my dad had this. You'd like this one, Alan. He had a C melody saxophone, which is it's a very old saxophone that's tuned to the key of C, but that's not really around anymore. People don't use them. But they was just lying around in the corner, and I got a hold of a fingering chart and started messing around with that, and I took some lessons on the saxophone. And then the school year started, and I was entering into band class for the first time. And I thought, oh, well, I already have an idea of how the saxophone works. Like, I'll try something different just for fun. And I ended up trying the clarinet. And then I got, I liked it. And then I got hooked up with a great teacher, in a lucky way. My dad, he was an amateur flutist, is what he would do for fun. He's a physician, but he played flute, and his teacher happened to be married with the clarinet professor at the University of Western Ontario in London, Ontario, where I lived. And sort of as a favor, this guy kind of took me on as a student. He didn't, as a university professor, he didn't teach young kids very often at all. And he was a great influence on me, and that's how I ended up being a professional clarinetist from there on. Yeah.
Great. For myself, I recall studying piano briefly, maybe 2 years or so when I was quite young, and I hated every minute of it because I wasn't as good as my dad and my brothers, my older brothers, who had been doing it for longer than me. And I remember not knowing how to read music. I just would kind of do everything by ear. And I remember finding it frustrating, and I negotiated with my parents to quit. I would have been in grade 3 at the time, maybe grade 4, and they agreed under the condition that I took a band instrument in grade 6 because it was optional at my school. So I was like, sure, no problem. So grade 6 came around, and I remember we got to put down our top 3 choices for instruments. And I put down in this order: clarinet was number 1, oboe as number 2, and trumpet as number 3. And I remember our band teacher kind of went around the room, and I think he had the list of what we all wanted to do. This was like at the end of grade 5. And I remember he kind of looked at he got us to like open our mouths so he could see our teeth, and stick out your tongue or something, and he wanted to see kind of how things how we're built. And then we got something in the mail in the summertime, and mine said tenor saxophone. So I was like, okay. I remember, I don't even know, I kind of knew what a saxophone was, but I didn't know what a tenor saxophone was. So anyway, so that's what I started on, and it wasn't until grade 9 that I started bassoon, at the end of grade 9, and that was basically because my high school band teacher also conducted the Saskatoon Youth Orchestra, and he needed a bassoon the following year. He needed another bassoon player, so he was thinking ahead, and he could tell that I was a bit bored in band class. So, so starting grade 10, I was doing bassoon, and I remember not going into the first rehearsal, not knowing how to read bass clef. Again, trying to just play by ear. Um, um, just at the end of what you were saying, Mika, you were talking about influence. So let's talk maybe just a little about some influences. I know maybe some of us spoke a little bit already about some early influences, but if you didn't already speak to that, maybe let us know what were some of your early influences, and then maybe moving ahead a little bit, what inspired you or led you to want to pursue music after high school, like to pursue it more seriously? Who wants to start? Anyone?
Well, I kind of talked a little bit about my teacher earlier, who was really inspiring to me, this guy, Jerry Summers. And what he did for me as sort of, I was a high school student, was he would place me in these university ensembles. Like I would sit in the band, the university band, you know, as like a freshman in high school. And I kind of just thought that was normal, you know, that you know, people would do that kind of stuff. Or I would go to his master classes, and I learned a lot. Just, you know, I got a really good head start with music that way. And then after that, I ended up taking an audition. I was at a summer program. He, you know, encouraged me to do summer programs as well. And there were people from the school auditioning people to see if they could, trying to recruit. And I thought, oh, well, I'm just doing, I may need to do auditions if I want to do music in life. So I'll just do an audition and just see how it goes. And ended up getting into this school, and it was kind of an arts high school, boarding school, and in Michigan. And I ended up going, like it was a summer, I ended up going the next fall for my, you know, senior year of high school. And it really opened me up to, you know, what was going on out there. There are people there from all over the world, mega talented people. I was kind of near the middle bottom level there. And, you know, kids were practicing hours and hours a day, you know, and I'd never seen that before. I didn't even know that, you know, that was even something that people did. And they were just going all day practicing. And so I was like, okay, I guess I better get into this. And then it just kind of went on from there. I had a great teacher, and I went to university, and then I, you know, went into the profession eventually.
For me, I was lucky after my probably not so hot first year of playing the oboe. My mom taught piano at the University of Western Ontario for decades. And so sort of like Mika, she asked the oboe teacher there to help me. and her name, that time it was Laura Seifert. And I was really lucky looking back, because Laura made sure I got a real instrument instead of this plastic thing I was playing that my school owned, and better reeds. And we went through, I still remember, I studied with her for several years, and we would have a scale of the week every week. And I had to do all my scales with her, and each scale with different articulation patterns. And we went through the entire Barrett book, which is like the Bible of oboe playing. It's this book this thick of etudes. And looking back, I was just very lucky, because she gave me a foundation that always was there. And in my case, my path was quite unusual, because I'm a pianist too. And so I stopped playing the oboe after high school for a while. And I was a piano major for undergrad, and I did my master's in collaborative piano. And it wasn't until my master's that I sort of got back into oboe playing. But because I had had this really good foundation from this teacher, it was still kind of there. I was just very lucky. And later on, other teachers who were influences, Richard Kilmer, who's the oboe teacher at Eastman, I met him in Banff. I went to Banff for several summers, and he's a very positive, encouraging person. And at the time I met him, I had a job as a pianist, as a collaborative pianist in Vienna at the Hochschule für Musik. It's kind of the big school there. So I had a total other career, but I was always playing the oboe as well and doing gigs. And Mr. Kilmer was just very encouraging. And he said, you know, if you want to make the oboe your main thing, you could do it, give me a call. And so at a certain point, I did call him, and I ended up getting a leave of absence from my job in Vienna. And I did go to Eastman eventually and did a doctorate in oboe with him. So and he's just very, very positive, which I try to be with my students too. I've had an occasional other teacher who was not positive, and I won't even name them, but that's not the way to go. I really believe, like Mr. Kilmer does, that you can always approach things from a positive, constructive angle, always. And then I was also really lucky to spend a year in New York studying with John Ferrillo, who at that time was co-principal oboe of the Metropolitan Opera. Now he's principal in Boston. And that was an amazing year too. It was tough. I worked really hard and I spent hours every day making reeds, but it was really good. So I've been lucky to have really, really great teachers. Each of them sort of brought their own thing to it, and they've all been huge influences.
Well, I guess for me, I sort of always felt like maybe this was the journey for me, music in that sense. And like both Mika and Robin said, I've been incredibly blessed with the teachers that I've had, and I've found them to always be very inspiring. When I first started lessons in grade 6, I had a fantastic teacher, Grace Dunsmore, who was married to a professor at the university, and then she went away because he went on sabbatical. And I feel very blessed that then she sent a couple of students to another teacher, Beverly Lane, who basically kind of became my musical mom in many ways. And as Robin sort of described within her teachers as well, I feel that she really set me up with such an incredible foundation. And I was very blessed in so many ways in that sense. And then going to university, I don't know, for me, I guess it sort of felt like this was always what I was going to do. I was going to go to music school and kind of follow that path. It was music or some sort of healing, which I'm finding more and more incorporating the two into my life. So yeah, I think it was just a lot of belief from a lot of amazing people. And even hearing Robin speak, I think that's one of the things that has always stuck with me, and I try to carry into my teaching as well, that I think belief can take anybody anywhere in that sense. And even as I tell my students, feel free to borrow my belief if you don't have any in yourself. And I think, yeah, I feel incredibly blessed. So I don't know if that makes much sense, but it feels like it's been a journey, and the journey continues. And I think we're very blessed to be musicians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just thinking, for me, probably, it's funny looking back how just the timing of certain things can play a big role. Opportunities and the people you meet at the right time, the teacher that you're with at the right point in your development, or the teacher that knows exactly what you need at that time. But for me, I know a significant step towards me knowing that I wanted to pursue music was, it was really in high school that it was just, I went, after graduating from grade 8, the school I went to, the K-8, was, the vast majority of students would go to a certain high school in Saskatoon after that. And there were maybe 2 or 3 of us from my class that ended up going to a different school. I went to the school that was sort of known as the music one, but it was also a strong academic school. And just the band teacher there, Wayne Toes, also he was the guy that also ran the Saskatoon Youth Orchestra. Really saw that there was an opportunity for me to maybe try something that would be more of more challenging than just playing in the band, in the jazz band. youth orchestra, this Bean Youth Orchestra, and on an instrument where he had a need for an instrument. So this was a big source of inspiration for me. I had never played orchestral music before I guess this was grade 10, and it would just opened up this whole nother world. And I realized that that world is something I would probably not experience as a saxophonist, the whole symphony orchestra world. So that was a big source of inspiration, and later in high school, I got to study with the professor, saxophone professor at the University of Saskatchewan, Marvin Eckroth, and he was a big influence on me, and growing up in Saskatoon, where it's not a big city, but there were some really great people there at the time, and that really had a big effect on me as a musician, a young musician. And so I studied at the University of Saskatchewan, and remember it just happened that when I got into in my undergrad in first year, there was a couple of bassoonists in town that left to pursue other studies, and I ended up doing an audition for the Saskatoon Symphony, and I didn't get it, but then I got to be their extra player, and I started playing contrabassoon with them. And if I was in a bigger city, I wouldn't have had some of those experiences, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, so at the university, it was like my teachers, my profs, and then this orchestral side of things that I got to experience was very very helpful and very inspirational for me. And I did have a backup plan though in high school. Physics was my backup plan. I was good at physics, and both of I have two older brothers, and they both did physics degrees at the University of Saskatchewan, and yeah, if music didn't work out after first year, I was going to switch over. Thankfully, I didn't have to.
You have the mind for it, definitely. And if I can just sort of add to that, because you made me sort of think as well, just what you said with timing. And I always find that very interesting beyond music and life in general. I sometimes consider it divine timing in that sense, but I just kind of want to add, I guess, as well, a little plug for my university teachers in that sense, that again, I feel very lucky. Like Alan, I was in a small town in St. John's, and the university there, it's incredible, definitely. And my teacher, Michelle Chermy, to this day, she is still a guiding light in my life, and all of my teachers are still, but she's even been here a couple of times for the Syrinx Flute Festival, and kind of passing that on to my students and other students as well, which has been incredible. And actually, when I finished my undergrad, she went to do her doctorate. And again, talk of timing, when I heard of this, I thought, I don't have to go anywhere. A good teacher is going to come to me. And that's when I first met Leslie Newman, who is in Toronto now, and a pal of Mika's as well. And again, I feel incredibly blessed to have studied with Leslie in Newfoundland. So blessed that then I went and did my master's in Ottawa with Robert Cram, who, again, to this day he's in my teaching, he's in my life, he's in every part of me, really. But then Leslie, again, with timing, I thought, what am I going to do after my master's? And then it turned out she was at the Glen Gould School, and she contacted me and was like, well, what are you doing next year? And one thing led to the next. And so then I went back to study with her. And again, she's been here to Syrinx since I've been here, and actually lived here many years before me as well. And then I was lucky, yeah, to just kind of make ties from Leslie in Winnipeg as well. So yeah, I think there's something about trusting the universe and where it's going to guide us, and leading us to the people that we certainly need as well. And I think, yeah, I think we've all been lucky for that.
I have to give a shout out to my parents
Fair.
who drove me 60 miles to London every Saturday morning for my oboe lesson. Even when I didn't always want to go, they were so great about it. You know, long before I had my driver's license, there we were on the highway. And because in my hometown of Sarnia, Ontario, it's only about 50,000 people. Of course, there was no teacher there. There was no youth orchestra there either, unfortunately. All I had was my high school band. So I was really lucky that my parents knew the value of going to find a good teacher. And there's an orchestra in Sarnia called the International Symphony with people from Michigan and Ontario in it. And I got to play in the International Symphony when I was in high school, which was pretty cool. But my parents were also, being so into music, we would go to hear the Toronto Symphony and the Detroit Symphony. So I was just lucky that my parents were willing to spend a lot of time on the highway.
Yeah. Talk about influences for sure. The teachers have been so. I've been blessed to have some great teachers too. I told you about Jerry in London, Jerry Summers, and then when I went to that high school, the teacher's name was Deb Hodaki, and she kind of like lived like a monk. She lived alone with her dog, and she was just 100, and it was in the middle of the woods, and she was just 100% devoted to her students. And every student, I think, felt like they were her special student, their favorite student. I bet every student felt that way. And she had these great connections with everyone. And I was completely devoted to her. And she went to the University of Michigan. She got a job there, and I followed her there, and I stayed with her through a master's degree through 6 years. And then after that, I worked with Bob Crowley, who was principal clarinet of the Montreal Symphony, and he was an amazing guy, a magician, like actual amateur magician, and magician on the clarinet too, amazing. And I would just go. I learned so much just watching him play. I'd go watch the symphony every week. Sometimes I'd watch all 3 performances of whatever they were doing, just because I was so inspired. And I also worked. He was amazing. And Joaquin Valdepeña is principal clarinet of the Toronto Symphony, and I ended up working with him a lot as well. And he gave me so much inspiration and opportunities. Actually, getting to play next to him in the orchestra was like a dream come true for me when it happened. And these people are just so important, and it's just yeah, I've been blessed for sure as well.
Yeah, and I try to remember when I'm teaching, I look back to when I was a student, and what your teacher says to you carries so much weight. And I still remember specific things that teachers have said to me. So I always try to think before I talk, because it really matters what you say. Words really matter.
Right.
That's true. Yeah.
So especially at that age, especially students who are university age, we are a big influence on them, and I take that very, very seriously. I also learned from my own experience I'm pretty sure I sounded really awful the first year I played when I didn't have a teacher. And I went to a music camp at the end of grade 9 and played with full of confidence, not knowing that I sounded like a kazoo probably. And I still remember that people making fun of me when they heard me play. And I've never forgotten that. And I learned from that, you can't judge somebody based on the way they sound the first time you hear them. You can't judge. And you also can't judge based on where people come from either, because talent can be anywhere. It just needs guidance and the proper nurturing. And I hope that my own experience has made me an encouraging and supportive teacher, because I think that's really, really important. And something I got from Mr. Kilmer, his philosophy is he wants everybody to find their own voice and not try to sound like him or any particular person. And I think finding your own voice is important. But he also believes in taking people wherever they are, playing wise, that's where they are, and that's fine, and that's where you start, and you take them as far as they can go. And I think that's important too.
Absolutely.
I feel like I should mention also my first bassoon teacher, who that was Peter Graflin in Saskatoon, who played with Principal with the symphony for many years, who had an uncanny knack of keeping young students so engaged and motivated and inspired. And he had a huge private bassoon studio. He must have had a dozen, 15 maybe private bassoon students in Saskatoon, which, you know, at the time was, I don't know, it was less than 200,000 people probably when I lived there. It was a huge number of bassoon students. And then my master's degree, Fred Hemke at Northwestern University. It was he was gave me exactly what I needed at that time, and yeah, big influence on me for sure. Maybe I can get you all to maybe just, do you want to talk about maybe through your careers, how maybe things have matured or changed for you, and sort of your direction, and maybe how you think about music and what you do. Maybe Leila, can you start? And I want to hear more a little about you mentioned the healing part, how that sort of worked its way into the way you approach things.
Well, it's kind of a broad question in so many ways. I think, again, like I sort of look at life in general, like it's a journey, and certainly the music side of it within that's the journey in itself. And I think it's constantly evolving, but I think perhaps my main goal and my main thought with it is to constantly just try to spread love, joy, and hope, and even belief, for that matter, as well. And I feel like I'm a bit of an eclectic musician, perhaps, that I love classical music, I love orchestra, I love chamber music, I love all of it, but I also love to play the guitar. I've been lately really working with the Native American flute, and even teaching that a little bit. When one person approached me with it, which kind of connects again in with the healing side of things, that, well, even today, science says everything is energy. As we know, as musicians, we're playing with energy, we're playing with frequency and vibration. So that's something that's always on top of music and playing and teaching and whatnot. It's something that has always kind of sparked interest in me. And in more recent years, I've decided to branch out and study different sides of that. And one of the latest things is actually sound healing and working with tuning forks and different things like that. And just, yeah, learning what can be done with energy, with sound, with frequency. So I find it all, yeah, incredibly fascinating. I think I've always been, and I think all of us, in fact, are actually drawn to music as something that heals, whether we're realizing that or not. And I think now, even being stuck in our homes in a different way in a pandemic, I think we're taking note, or maybe some that haven't taken note before are starting to notice the effect that music can have on their lives as well. So I know I'm sort of going all over the place with my answer. But as I say, I think it kind of boils down to me that it is something that can elevate us. It's something that can heal us. And I just want to continue to explore how far I can take that as a musician, as a human being. I think we all have capacity to heal with vibration. I think even science is kind of catching on more and more to that, and proving things that mystics have been saying for years and haven't been able to prove in the past. So I'm super fascinated by that, and I'm super excited by everything that's happening in science. And I've always sort of believed that it's not meant to disprove what we sometimes inherently know as humans or musicians, but rather to work hand in hand with it. And yeah, so I continue to love to play, love to teach, and I find more and more that I'm incorporating this into my teaching and my playing for that matter as well. And even to kind of take it in another direction, as musicians, we talk about being in the zone a lot. And this is something now, like in the spiritual side of things, they say in the flow. So it's really actually the same thing. And now even again, something that science is studying, and science can back up, you know, just even brain waves and what state our brain is in when we're considered in the zone. So I'm very fascinated by all of this. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or takes me in totally different directions, but just even to add another thought to that, I think one of the things I love about playing in an orchestra or chamber music, again, is actually the energy of it and what we're able to create for ourselves, for the group, and for the audience in that sense as well. And I think I've always approached music and try to teach my students as well. If I can touch one person with one note in the performance, then my job is done. And I think it's very easy to forget that, but I think to me, that's perhaps the power of music and what we can do as musicians. So I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I encourage people to check out energy healing and different things and explore.
And it's kind of related to what Leila just said. It's a journey. It's not like we're ever done. It's not like we're ever there. It's not like, oh, today I'm the player of my dreams and I'm done working on it. No, you're always improving things and working on things. And one of my teachers used to say, it's the journey that matters. And I think that's true. And I can't imagine ever thinking that I'm there. And especially right now, I'm trying to use this time to really focus on fundamental things and work on things I've always wanted to have more time to work on, you know, the time that we don't always have. So yeah, it's kind of, it's all a journey.
I was thinking about, for me, when I was a student through university, and it was my mindset was all about playing. My formal university studies were on saxophone, and I always wanted to, you know, master the instrument and to be able to do anything on it, and to try to be perfect all the time. And after finishing my studies and sort of being more in the real world and teaching and doing performances, and you know, I started to realize that it's like, I mean, I'm using the saxophone as a tool. Really, I just need to make music. And that was a sort of a nice shift in a good way for me to realize, like, yeah, this is about music. And true, I don't want to let the saxophone get in the way. You know, it's important to have good control over the instrument and everything, so you can do what you need to do. But and to connect with audiences, and like Leila was saying, you know, if you connect with one person with one note, you know, you've done your job. And how important that is to, you know, when I'm doing a recital or to doing a performance, just to try to have that connection with the audience. And just something, Robin, you're mentioning about how the journey is so important. And, you know, I like that this perfection that we strive for, like it's kind of unattainable, right? I mean, you can play something as perfectly as you possibly could, and then, you know, you could break it down and analyze it and play it back and listen to it or whatever. And there's always something. There's so many microscopic little things that you could do differently. And, you know, it's like, if I ever have that perfect performance, then I can quit. I guess I can move on to something else maybe. But I like that it's this you know, it's funny to think that it's like this unattainable thing, but it's so fun in that journey to try to get there that, you know.
Well, sorry, yeah. I was going to say it's being human too, right? Like we strive to become better, and I think perfection is kind of subjective anyway, whether it's music or something else. Like I think sometimes students might actually think they did a perfect performance, but you know, others may or may not agree. So I think, yeah, it's very subjective as well.
Yeah, Mika, any comments about
Well, I
your
don't know,
sort
it's
of
really
career path?
inspiring listening to whatever all you guys are saying. Honestly, like, and as far as things have developed, yeah, it really is the journey. You know, playing an instrument, it's it it it's can be very humbling sometimes. You know, and you know, you really are putting yourself out there. You know, and you know, you can have these amazing highs, but then, you know, there can sometimes things happen, and then there can be these big lows, right? And it can happen to anybody. So I've been working on just kind of knowing that is the way that things are, and like what Layla and what everyone's saying is that, you know, the main thing is that is to really use your energy and try and make art and inspire and have, you know, people connect with people and make music, and you're doing that through your instrument. You know, it's like, but it has been different, you know, as a student, you know, you're always just getting better all the time. It's quite a steep curve, and then there comes a time where you plateau a bit, and you're kind of like, I'm at the same level, and then it gets kind of harder to get better. But now it's been, you know, if you do it for a number of years, the curve kind of looks like this, you know, and you have to really maintain it and know that, and you understand that even if you played a piece 10 years ago and you played it perfectly, that when you play it the next time, it might be a totally different experience, you know, or maybe bring something new to it, it's been a really interesting, you know, journey. As everyone says, there's so much to it. It's artistic, it's mental, it's physical, and it's hard, but it's also can be beautiful and amazing, and so it's been for me, it's been a great profession.
Something that I've learned, especially since I've been playing in the Winnipeg Symphony, which is almost 14 years now. Wow. Is that having a routine is really important. You have to have your daily thing. And I didn't believe this for a long time, that, yeah, long tones, blah, blah, but it's true. It's true. And you have to have your daily routine, and you have to stick with it, because that gives you something to stand on. You can't just be winging it. You could, but you wouldn't last very long. And that's something that I think students, sometimes takes them a while to believe and to understand, that you have to have the discipline of a daily routine. And it's just for people who don't know much about music. I have had people say to me, yeah, musicians, you're so free and you just have fun, and you're not really disciplined. And I say, no, it's like being an athlete. It's like working out every day. You have to, even if you don't always want to, you have to, and you have to stay at a certain level, and you have to.
Well, I think now people are realizing that even more. They're going, you know, they're having a hard time at home, being you know, alone all day, and a lot of people are saying, and articles are written about, a routine being something that really helps people through their days, right?
Yeah, and I think just, well, to add to that, and also go back to something that Alan had said as well, because I think it is routine, it adds to the mental game as well. And I think the mental side of things is crucial in music, and I think that's something that's important for performing, practicing, all of it, just how we're speaking to ourselves, what we're doing. And just sort of to go back to what even Alan said a little while ago about not letting the saxophone get in his way. And I think that's something that maybe it gets to a point of realizing that, well, we're actually musicians. I'm not just a flute player, I'm a musician. The flute is just one way of letting my voice out. So I think we want to make sure, as Robin is saying, to, you know, to practice all those things so the instrument isn't actually getting in the way of our voice, and we can just express ourselves fully as musicians and not have to worry about what's happening technically, if that makes sense. And even to add to what Mika was saying about just progress and whatnot as well, I remember hearing at one point, and it stuck with me, that as we improve, what we're listening for, it's the progress, it's not going to be as drastic. And sometimes that can feel discouraging. But I think also as our ears improve as well, we're starting to hear things a little bit differently as well. So yeah, I think being a musician is important within all of it, not just a player.
Oh yeah, and it took me quite a long time to understand that working on technique is what actually frees you up to be able to have the tools to be able to play and express yourself the way you want. And it, you know, for years I thought, why do I have to play scales? Because nobody ever really explained why. It was just like, you got to do this. I don't want to, but you have to. But why? But that's why, because it gives you the tools, so you're not having to think the whole time you play, oh my God, what's that fingering? It's just there. And it took me a long time to realize that having that discipline, ultimately, it frees you up in performance, hopefully, to be able to just play the way you want to play and say what you want to say. So I do try to tell my students that there is a reason for that weekly scale.
I think about students, how, you know, really they've got a tough job when they're studying seriously in university, you know, with all the hours they have to put in and you know, all the work on fundamentals, when they don't fully understand maybe how, you know, you're going to rely on all of this for the rest of your career. You know, all of the work that you put in it's gonna pay off. And going through repertoire, learning repertoire quickly, you know, going through a lot of different repertoire. And I think about how, you know, I have the luxury now in my career to be able to revisit a lot of repertoire and to perform something for the 10th time, or that maybe even the 20th time in recital, or and while still learning new things. And you know, what a privilege it is to be able to build on what I did in my studies, my formal university studies, you know, where, you know, oh, got to learn this concerto now this sonata. And it's like, whoa, it seemed overwhelming at the time. And maybe it was a bit, but now when I get to revisit that same repertoire, it's like, wow, is this ever valuable to have all of that under your belt, and a different approach to it. And yeah, and you know, one thing, thinking of Mika, I don't think you're getting worse at all. For sure, you're not getting any worse. But
No worries.
you know, it happens to pretty much all of my undergraduate students. At some point, they'll come to a lesson. They're just like, I feel like I'm getting worse. And it's just like, well, the expectation still goes up, right? And then those plateaus seem like they're dips, but I don't think they're actually dips in many cases. But one learning curve thing for me, I was feeling pretty down when this pandemic hit and everything got canceled, and I lost a lot of performances and some trips I was looking forward to perform in other countries.
Yeah.
And one thing I did right away pretty much was I bought a bass guitar and I practiced a couple hours every day for about, I've let it peter off a little bit now, but it was something that I just wanted to do. And one of the best things for me that I found doing this was to experience that learning curve. To be steep like that was really, it did good things for me mentally, I think. And then I kind of came back to my saxophone and bassoon after a brief pause there, and kind of had a different approach, and was just like it was refreshing.
Sorry,
So your dog?
the dogs kind of
wandering off.
see something out there. Sorry.
maybe that's our cue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other topics? Anything you guys want to bring up? Because
No, but I
Corey
just
can
like to
edit
say
this.
to you guys, like, this has been great. You know,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
really inspiring, actually, because it's at this time, it's been a difficult time for everyone. You know?
It's true. Yeah, it's great to see you guys and
Yeah.
chat, definitely.
Yeah.
Hopefully it inspires beyond us.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hopefully we can make some live music together
Yes,
in the near
absolutely.
future. Hopefully
Standing
fairly.
6 feet apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just need a horn player. We're good to go.
That's
Right?
right. That's right. We've got
That's
a
right.
quintet almost.
Quintet.
Yeah, it was really great to hear you guys talk about your studies and your teachers and your inspirations and the learning curve and all of those things. It's just very inspiring. So thank you all.
Yes. Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and I do hope that we can visit in person soon.
Yeah, I
Yep.
feel that. Thank you guys. And, you know, we go through this experience alone, you know, kind of learning an instrument. So, you know, you're in the practice room alone so much. And it's just nice to be reminded of how you're not in it completely alone, and that other people are going through, have gone through similar experiences in different ways. And it's been really great to speak with you about all this today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. It's been fantastic to hear you guys speak. And thank you, Ellen, for hosting as well. And just even in hearing Mika just speak now as well, I think it's a reminder to us all, music and beyond. We may be alone at times, but we certainly are all in this together for sure. So yeah, it's great seeing you guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Okay, I think that's ready. Make sure I me mama moo, or whatever you're supposed to do. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna stop this. I bet you Tori's gonna like put that in or something. Okay. I hope not.
Advertising.